Okay, let's get started. My name is Alicia Powell, and I am the co-founder of Champions for Philanthropy. On behalf of my co-founder, Michelle Mays, and myself, we are so excited to present today's event and explore various careers within sports philanthropy, which is of particular interest to us at Champions for Philanthropy. For anyone unfamiliar with our organization, we assist professional athletes and other influencers with their charitable endeavors, everything from helping athletes start their nonprofit foundations to managing existing foundations. And because having a nonprofit isn't right for everyone, we also assist with creating various charitable projects and initiatives, connecting our clients with other nonprofits, and developing a strategy for giving. You can learn more about our work by following us on social media using the handle Champions for Philanthropy. And now I'll turn it over to Sarah Eddy, our marketing intern.
Thank you, Alicia. My name is Sarah Eddy, and I'm a sophomore at St. John's University. I'm also the events and marketing intern for Champions for Philanthropy. As a college student, I'm really interested in hearing what our panelists have to say about their careers and how they incorporate philanthropy into their sports fields. And now I'd like to introduce my fellow Champions intern, Mackenzie.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm Mackenzie Crana, and I am a junior from Fordham University, currently interning for Champions for Philanthropy. And both sports and philanthropy are huge interests of mine, so I'm looking forward to hear about how each panelist has been able to explore both of those passions. And with that being said, I will bring it back to our moderator and co-founder of Champions for Philanthropy, Alicia, and she will introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Mackenzie. I have the honor of presenting our panel of sports philanthropy professionals, Heather Hall, Bridget Gannon, Janet Sevilla, and Luke O'Quinn. First, we have Heather Hall. As Senior Director of Community Relations, Heather leads all social responsibility efforts for BSE Global Properties, including the Brooklyn Nets, Nets Gaming Crew, and Barclays Center, as well as the Nets Foundation. Hall brings more than 15 years of professional experience to BSE in both community relations and marketing. Prior to joining BSE in 2017, Hall spent 12 years with the New Jersey Devils and Prudential Center, most recently serving as the Director of Community Investment, where she developed, implemented, and measured programs to advance the company's social responsibility priorities and engagements. Hall also spent 1 year working with the American Lung Association in New Jersey. Hall is a graduate of University of Massachusetts Amherst with a BS in sports management and holds an executive certificate from the George Washington University in sports philanthropy. Fun fact, both Michelle and myself are alums of the GWU program as well as one of our co-panelists, Janet Sevilla. We also had the pleasure of working with Heather and her team when a client played for the Brooklyn Nets. Heather, great to see you. Next, we have Bridget Gannon. Bridget is an experienced sports philanthropy professional and Sports Business Journal Game Changers nominee. She's a senior director of social impact and events for the National Basketball Retired Players Association, the NBRPA. Prior to joining the NBRPA in 2018, she oversaw the Nationals Dream Foundation, the charitable arm of the Washington Nationals baseball team, and was MLB's 2018 All-Star Legacy Projects Coordinator, leading $1.7 million of capital improvement projects around the DC metro area. In addition to 10 plus years with the Washington Nationals, Gannon also had stints with the Washington Wizards, Washington Capitals, and Legg Mason Tennis Classic, now the City Open. A native of Philadelphia and proud alum of Mount St. Joseph Academy, Bridget received a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration degree from the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., and certificates from Yale University and Northwestern University. Thank you so much for joining us, Bridget.
Thank you for having me.
And next we have Luke O'Quinn. Luke serves as director of the Los Angeles Football Club Youth Leadership Program at the Breeze Foundation since August 2018. Luke manages the program operations and program development for YLP. He also leads the efforts for all curriculum building around life and social skill development, college and career readiness, and sports-based youth development. Luke is originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, where he grew up playing soccer and very quickly fell in love with everything about the culture of the sport. He studied at The Ohio State University, where he earned his bachelor's in social work. After graduation, he joined the OSU Learning and Fitness and Education through Sports, Life Sports Initiative, where he led the direction to create free sports programming for community youth using monthly clinics and a summer camp on the college campus. Luke also coached competitive youth soccer for Columbus Crew SC. He's passionate about using soccer to cultivate healthy and brave young leaders and to create change in the community. Thank you, Luke, for joining us. And lastly, we have Janet Sevilla. For over a decade, Janet has served as sports philanthropy advocate and corporate social responsibility professional. Powered by a passion for equity and fair access to resources, Janet has worked with multinational corporations, major league sports franchises, politicians, and professional athletes to design and implement successful, socially responsible initiatives that drive change in vulnerable communities. In 2020, Janet joined the #1 largest convention, sports, and entertainment destination in the world, the Georgia World Congress Center Authority, as the manager of sustainability and corporate social responsibility. Before GWCCA, Janet served as the community affairs manager for the Atlanta Braves, community development coordinator with the Los Angeles Galaxy, and the community relations associate with the Los Angeles Lakers. As an LA native, Janet graduated from UC Santa Barbara with a BA in Black Studies and Spanish with a concentration in sports management. In 2019, the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce recognized Janet as one of the 50 most influential Latinos in Georgia. Janet serves as a board member of WISE Atlanta and a member of Hermanas Unidas, HYPE, and M de Mujer. So Janet, thank you so much for joining us. And thanks again to all of our panelists. We're so excited to get the conversation started. So first, we'll start with you, Heather. Can you provide us a bit of background on you and your sports philanthropy journey?
Sure, absolutely. I'd probably like to say that my journey started well when I was in middle school. Actually, one of my best friend's mothers was a speech therapist at a time in a local elementary school, and they did a thing called Challenger Buddies. And what that was is they would pair middle school and high school students together with a child who had autism, and we'd play baseball together. So I think that was probably my first opportunity that I had merging sports and philanthropy together. So knowing that, growing into that, going through high school, doing your typical volunteer opportunities, I knew that still wanted to be a part of my life. With that being said, I was also an athlete growing up as well. So I wanted to figure out how to merge the two together because my career in the WNBA wasn't really going to happen. I did actually proclaim that I wanted to be the first woman in the NBA. So that didn't work, but I'm in the NBA on a different side. But with that being said, kind of just staying true to who I was and the passions that I've had and, you know, the experiences that kind of took me to where I am. So I did a couple internships. One big one was with the Special Olympics of New Jersey. So I did that my freshman year of college, and it really stuck with me for whatever I could do. And then I got my degree in sport management at UMass Amherst. And with that, I started my career with the New Jersey Devils as the marketing assistant. But marketing actually handled community development is what they called it at the time. So there was no community team. So I actually got to wear dual hats as an admin there. And then I've grown to be a manager there. During the lockout, I actually dipped out in 2012. I was recruited by the American Lung Association because I had an opportunity to make a decision for my career of where did I really want to sit? Did I still want to sit in the marketing side of things, or do I really want to go headfirst into philanthropy and stay there? So I knew that's what I really wanted to do. So I took a break from sports for a year. The team actually got sold during that lockout while I was gone, and I got recruited back to go to the Devils. So that's why I only did 1 year at the Lung Association, but definitely great opportunity to get nonprofit experience that way. But being able to come back to the Devils, partnering with a couple people over there to really build out a community department that didn't exist before this ownership group that took over. So, and then from there, just doing really anything we could to help the Newark neighborhoods succeed. I then got recruited in 2017 to the Brooklyn Nets, and here I am now.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing. Bridget, what about you? Can you tell us a little bit about your sports philanthropy journey?
Sure. I've been in professional sports for about 13 years now. I didn't start out in sports philanthropy, but it definitely became what I saw as my passion and my future career track when I was in my first internship with the Washington Capitals. And I just happened to start chatting with a woman in the lunchroom making coffee and said, "What do you do here?" She said, "I work in community relations." And I was like, that exists. And then through talking to her and some other people who were in the CR world, I was able to learn that in baseball at the time, MLB mandated that all teams have a nonprofit entity. And me as a business major, I really liked that, being able to quantify the amount of funds that you've raised, the amount of grants that you've given out, really be able to provide true numbers and metrics on your impact. That was really appealing to me. So my path was not a straight one. I stayed in sports. My bosses recommended a position at the Nationals, the first season of the new ballpark in 2008, and I was a glorious box office ticket seller. But through that role, I was really able to meet a lot of the front office executives who are coming in to drop off tickets at will call, as so many of us know how that goes. And I was able to meet some of the women who worked for the foundation. And the next season, I was their postgraduate assistant. Then the Nationals offered me a full-time position, also as an admin, similar to Heather. And I just waited patiently for 2 years until a full-time position opened at the Nats. And then I really was able to grow with the Dream Foundation. I matured both professionally and personally. And it was really wonderful to see so many things come to life in my time at the foundation. But DC is an interesting place to live. And after 14 years there, it was time for me to go. And this wonderful opportunity with the MBRPA came up, and it was really a chance to join an organization where I'm not competing for athletes' time anymore. They're not in game mode. They're at a different point in their career. They're retired. They want to give back. They want to get involved in the community. And it's been so wonderful building our Legends Care programs with our NBA and WNBA legends the past 2.5 years.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. Janet, and what about you? What was your sports philanthropy journey like?
So, similar to what Heather mentioned, my sports philanthropy journey, I take it back to when I was a kid. I actually used to be a kid that used to go to the youth center, and my brother enrolled me into sports. And this particular youth center one day had a sports banquet, and they had a LA Lakers player come into the youth center and give out trophies to the kids that were celebrating the end of the sports season. And so that moment always stayed in my mind. I'll never forget going up there. It was Lakers AC Green, and I was just in awe. I had this look on my face. I was in shock. And that moment stayed in me forever and pretty much set the tone to what my sports career has been in sports philanthropy. Little did I know that later on I'd be in a position where I would be the one that would be planning these sort of player appearances, community relations, a lot of initiatives. Fast forward, I always had a connection to philanthropy as a student that was either in youth centers, I was either in Upward Bound programs through college. And even in college, I worked a lot in our recreation center. So I got a lot of experience with marketing and fundraising. And I was heavily involved in an organization as well, in which I had roles of doing a lot of mentoring program. I would say my first like actual sports opportunity was I served as an intern for the LA Lakers summer camp at my school at UC Santa Barbara. And that allowed me to sort of meet individuals and get an understanding of kind of what that community aspect was of it. I'll never forget that year I had applied for a internship with them and got my cover letter ready, sent it in, never heard back, never got it. Graduated from college and needed to make a decision if I was going to go to grad school, what was I going to do, kind of a little bit burned out of undergrad. Took a trip to Spain for about 3 months. And right around that time, they had made the announcement. Well, David Beckham had made the announcement that he was coming to the States to play in MLS soccer. And I remember being across the soccer stadium and seeing that, thought, oh, that's pretty cool. Had no interest in soccer. When I made the decision to come back to the States, I told myself that I was going to take a break from school and that I was going to focus in getting some experience in sports. At that time, I still wasn't sure where in sports, but I wanted something related to giving back, volunteering. And I had an opportunity from a former classmate at UC Santa Barbara who sent me a internship opportunity with the LA Galaxy under community development, and I took it, and it was fantastic. I loved it so much. The following year, I got an opportunity to go back with the Lakers for their summer camp as a staff member, and I got to meet the community relations director, build a relationship with her, and that led to an opportunity to apply for a role with them, and worked with them for about a season. Then the opportunity opened up where the person that was formerly in community relations had left. Director called me, asked me if I would be interested in working a couple of hours here and there, and I said sure, why not. And then at that time I had made the decision I was going to go back to grad school, and I remember sitting there, I was packaging donations and writing letters and packaging soccer balls, and I was like, I think I can do this, I should apply. And I did. I was grateful that I was given the opportunity to work with the LA Galaxy and got hired full time and spent 7 seasons there. Then I moved to Atlanta to serve as the community affairs manager with the Atlanta Braves, was 7 seasons there. And then earlier this year, I took on the role as manager of sustainability and corporate social responsibility with the Georgia World Congress Center. So my path has been all in within sports teams. Did a little pivot. There's still some sports there, but it's still giving back and helping a brand grow their philanthropic efforts in the community.
Nice. And it's interesting. All three of you ladies have a very diverse group of sports. You know, you didn't just stick to one sport, you got to see a few different sports. So that's very interesting. Luke, would love to hear from you about your background.
Yeah, thank you to all the other panelists for sharing. I really enjoyed hearing these different journeys. So I think I kind of can take pieces from everyone that just spoke here, but you know, my draw towards this field was just definitely around the passion for playing soccer. I was not a very strong student academically in school. I was very shy, had trouble speaking. So soccer was just an outlet for me that helped me, you know, learn to speak to people and, you know, ask questions, things like that. And so as I grew up, different opportunities with my teams where we would, you know, do little camps with, you know, random kids from the community, or we would go to school to do a little clinic. And I always just felt a lot of joy from those experiences, but never thought that it could be a job or an occupation. And so as I, you know, went through college, I was a social work major, so I was not in the sports field. I wanted to be a guidance counselor at a school and coach soccer. That was kind of my focus. And I slowly started learning more about just like the world of youth sports, and particularly for those in underserved communities who may not have like the resources available to play the sports. And so that really, you know, struck a chord with me of just like providing opportunities for kids that may not otherwise be able to play a sport. And, you know, when I was younger, it's like I knew how much joy it brought me to play and like how it could take me to this other space. And to be able to, you know, allow or give that to another, you know, kid was like something very powerful for me. And so I haven't worked for a lot of professional sports teams, but I've worked with them. So at the Ohio State University, that Alicia pronounced so properly, the Ohio State, the athletics department is so massive, and the football program is so big there that it's like practically a professional sports team. And the organization that I worked for partnered with the School of Social Work to put on these free sports programs. So I was kind of the middleman in between the social work and the sports side, where, you know, the athletics department had resources, had equipment, had the facilities, and the social work side kind of focused on the best practices to engage the community. I moved out to California for a change of pace, a new challenge. I'd lived in Ohio my whole life, but wanted to get involved with the community and particularly soccer. And the I had known about this Los Angeles Football Club, so Janet's former clubs or occupation's rival. There's a new club coming into town. I'm a soccer nerd and just had been following them. And on Instagram, they had posted this picture about a youth leadership program at a nonprofit. And I thought that, that was very similar to what I had been doing. Soccer leadership in the community was like kind of all of my big pieces that I, feel passionate about. And I thought that the combination of a nonprofit partnering with a professional sports team was very unique and not very common across the board. And so I had engaged with them, asked to just, have coffee and see if I could volunteer. And 6 months later, some more opportunities had opened up. And so, I work very closely with the Los Angeles Football Club, but employed by a nonprofit youth center in central LA right now.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for sharing. So for each of you, what skills do you have that allow you to succeed in your role? And maybe you can tell us a little bit about what it is that you do in that role. Bridget, let's start with you.
Sure. First of all, I think it's very important, as we've just seen in 2020, to be flexible and to be able to pivot, but stay true to your brand and your mission and your cause. And for so many of us, that became virtual programming. But I think that's just the nature of sports, though. For those of us, Janet and I in baseball, rain delays are a thing. You have to be flexible and figure out how you're going to handle that. You also never know what's going to happen during a game. And so I think the flexibility there goes a long way. For me, definitely relationship building has been a skill that has really helped me excel in the sports philanthropy world, because I think people don't realize how many individuals you have to work with. You have to work with your board. You have to work with your ownership group. You have to work with the athletes and their spouses, sometimes their other family members, also your donors, your corporate and your community partners. There are so many different types of individuals and organizations that you need to have really wonderful professional relationships with. And I think if you're able to be just really great with relationship building, this could be like a natural fit. But those are things that I think for me, definitely the relationship building, and then especially this year, the flexibility, but also never forgetting this, we're in this role to serve. So no matter what, level of your career you're at, roll your sleeves up, get your hands dirty, help your staff, help others, and really lead by example and through servant leadership.
That's such a great point. I tell people when they ask about sports philanthropy, and specifically working with athletes, I think people think it's glamorous. It's such a glamorous thing to be in sports, but we're here to serve. So you're getting your hands dirty and you're rolling up your sleeves. So, if you were looking for a glamorous position, it may not be in sports or in sports philanthropy. You might want to keep looking. So that's a great point. Janet, what about you? What do you feel the skills that you have that allow you to succeed during your sports philanthropy career?
So I would echo the relationship building is critical, being able to connect to the different audiences that you are working with. Also being able to use data to be able to tell the story. It's so critical and important. And being able to also find those unique partnerships and be creative with it. I would have to say that in my last role, I use I'm bilingual, so I use my Spanish a lot to be able to give me access to a whole different community and introduce them to sport and build that relationship with the brand, and being able to not only communicate with the audience, but also I was a bridge connector with our Spanish speaking players within my former teams as well, and getting them involved. Oftentimes, if they don't understand kind of what community relations is, having that person that can communicate that philosophy, what they can do, and also build that rapport with them to be able to utilize them the best to their talent. You mentioned, everybody thinks this is glamorous. Like we don't interact with players. You probably get a good 45 minutes max or if not 15 minutes. I mean, that's the sort of fun piece of it. Also being solution oriented, you're going to come across a lot of fire drills or things that happen on day of events. And so, often being able to think quick on your feet is probably something that you definitely learn there. And not only building relationships outside, but also collaborating inside and being able to use your colleagues, whether it's in the social team, partnerships team, because they also have clients that they need to work with. I always loved when we would come up with creative programs for corporate partnerships, and they just loved the idea. And it was just such a natural fit to be able to execute those.
Nice. And just switching gears a little bit, Heather, what would you say your favorite memory has been within your sports philanthropy career?
So it's funny, I've actually been trying to think about that for a little while, right? Because it always helps that you take a break during the things that you've done so you can think about what you've done, right? I think a lot of us in our positions in the industry, we're always go, 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 go. So to take a step back, take a breath, and take a look and go, wow, I really did this. So I think there's a couple. I would probably say one of my most recent ones was when I first started with the Nets. I had started in November of 2017, and less than a month later, I was able to bring in 200 kids into our building for a December holiday party. And what that really meant is, dealing a lot with the community in Brooklyn and having underserved communities that you're working with. How can you provide something for them that they may not have? So I learned about a group that we were working with that may not have gifts for the holidays. So what better way is than to open up the doors of the Barclays Center, have 200 kids come in, run around. We had arts and crafts. We had our entertainment team, Team Hype was out there. They did a little show for the kids. We had our PA announcer there. It was a great moment to have, and just to see all the smiles on those kids' faces. That's when you know when you're successful. I think a lot of people always ask, how do you measure success, right? And sure, we could go through the data and everything, and we always get into that. But what I always first tell people, by smiles is what it is. Because that's when you really hit home. And when you see a little kid just with the biggest smile ever. And I had a kid, we gave each kid a gift and 2 tickets to an upcoming game that day for a future game. But I had one of the kids come up to me that day and said, this was the best day of his life. And he was 8. And I was like, oh my, like, that's what does it for me. So that's for the youth side of things in 2017. And then really quick, I'd have to say, probably within the last few weeks of what we've done for the community in terms of census and voting. So we partnered with the New York City Census and a New York City voter registration group, and we rented a double-decker bus and went out and drove all through Brooklyn for 2 days on October 1st and October 2nd, and went to all the areas that had a low response rate for filling out the census and a low response rate for registering to vote. So just being boots on the ground for that. So, when you were saying of how we have to roll our sleeves up, that was something I think was great for us to do. And realizing how tall a double-decker bus is in the city between the bus and the traffic light can be a little scary.
Well, the work was amazing. So thank you for that there. And before I move on to the next question, I just want to encourage all of the participants, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box, and we will get to them towards the end of the program. So for Luke, what would you say the best way is to make a meaningful impact while working in sports philanthropy?
So this is a really good question. Out of the ones that we had read, I was like, this is, I think, very compelling because I think, like, to measure impact a lot of different ways. Like, obviously we want like a measurement system in place to like gather data. But I think before you want that impact, you need to like ask the community and start with them. Find some dedicated group of people that want to be involved in whatever it is we're putting on, but asking them like what their needs are, like what does the community need most, like that you see that, you know, maybe the other side, like the corporate side of, you know, isn't able to necessarily put their eyes on or articulate without being within the community. So I think that's the first best way to start, is just getting a needs assessment from the community itself and some spokespeople that care enough to voice that opinion. And then the job is on us, like, you know, the staff, you know, the club or the professional organization to, you know, then be very intentional with those needs and curate, you know, whether it's the content, the programming, to specifically address what the needs are. And then hopefully there's like a measurement system in place to kind of rate, you know, how well we did at that. Obviously, you know, the smiles, the thank yous, those like testimonials can speak to that impact once it's all finished.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing. And Bridget, what would you say is the biggest challenge in sports philanthropy at this moment? Because we're in a very unique, unprecedented time right now.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is just really missing this year is the ability to put on youth clinics. No matter what sport you work in, so much of the outreach on the youth level and in the communities is clinics. And that's just something with COVID, we really haven't been able to do that, depending on what state you're in. But I think that's when I spoke earlier about a lot of us having to pivot towards this virtual programming. Our full court press program, we usually do 20 clinics around the country with our legends as coaches. We're making that virtual. We started a Legends Girl Chat virtual series where girls from Girls Inc. chapters across the country could have really substantial and powerful conversations with WNBA legends. And so it's on us to figure out, how can we still serve? How can we still make an impact if we can't really be there in person? And for us on the legend side, we also needed to be wary of the fact of so many of our legends are in that age bracket where you really didn't want them leaving the house. You know, they needed to take care of themselves and stay safe. And so trying to figure out different ways that they could virtually volunteer, that was something that we put some thought into with the NBA Cares crew towards the beginning of the pandemic. But I do just want to piggyback a little off of what Luke said. The thing that it just amazes me so much with sports is it's one of the only things globally that brings people together, countries together. It crosses cultures, it crosses demographics, and it's just so powerful. And it's a beautiful thing to be a part of, but there's definitely so much of that in-person assistance and impact lacking right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Heather, what do you see as one of the challenges that you guys have faced during this time?
I mean, I think kind of almost echoing Bridget as well. A lot of the stuff we do, we have a Nets basketball academy that services youth 6 to 14. So a lot of that was pivoting about clinics, right? Our bread and butter was going to these gyms, going to these schools and doing these programs for them. So we actually, I would probably say the first 2 weeks of the pandemic, when everybody got shut down, feels like 5 years ago at this point, but the beginning of March, we sat down and we huddled as a CR team and said, okay, now is the time to use our relationships. So we were able to pivot and go to them and say, what do you need? We're here for you. So it's very easy when we get into the season and doing what we're doing is, hey, we have tickets for a game. Do you think you can have 20 kids come to a game? We're always asking for favors in a sense. Obviously it's all doing good, but now is the time that we can turn and say, how can we help you? But by having those relationships, what everybody had said before about relationship building, you kind of already know what they need or what they're going to need. So you can really step in there and help with that. So we actually have gone virtual with our clinics now. We actually have a camp this weekend that we're doing for our youth on Saturday and Sunday. But we've also done something for the community as a whole. Due to social distancing and everything that's been happening, especially in the New York area, all the furloughs, the job layoffs that have happened, the demand for food has been increased, but the food pantries have decreased due to social distancing. So a lot of food pantries, and if you're from the New York area, a lot of stuff is tight spaces. So to adhere to those social distancings, they couldn't operate. So what we did and thought about it, we have great relationships with a lot of the pantries throughout Brooklyn. We actually opened the doors of the Barclays Center atrium and did a mobile food bank pop-up. So we're averaging, since April, we've been doing one once a month for all the members of the community that could come and get food.
Oh, that's wonderful. So Janet, what does your company focus on within the community, and which focus are you most excited about?
So at the Georgia World Congress Center, we just unveiled our new strategy that's focused on better environments, better leaders, and better communities. And what's unique about this role is that we are bridging sustainability and corporate social responsibility. Oftentimes they're kind of separated, but really they intersect. I'm excited at being able to create new initiatives within that. We have a really strong volunteerism program that currently lives under Better Communities. And so we get our workforce pre-COVID to go out and give into the community. Similar to everyone else, we also had to pivot digitally, looking also at building our Better Leaders pillar. And that focuses in being able to partner with the local colleges within the Atlanta metro area, and also looking at high schools and being able to give them opportunities to connect with our team members and give exposure to hospitality and tourism and sports as well. Volunteerism is definitely going to look different moving forward, smaller groups. Not all organizations are comfortable with that. And so kind of reimagining what that is. So exploring whether it's team members donating stuff and you have a smaller group, coordinating stuff and you give it out to the organization, could be an option. But right now, what we've pivoted over at the authority is being able to do some virtual giving back.
That's wonderful. Luke, for you, you work closely with a lot of sports organizations, as you mentioned. Why do you think it's important for sports organizations to prioritize philanthropy?
Yeah, so I think because these different orgs, particularly the professional teams or clubs, like their audience or the group of people that they want to be sitting in the stadium and kind of accepting the club as a part of the city is those that would benefit from philanthropic initiatives. So to have that buy-in and kind of to be accepted by the city. So I mean, I'm going to use Los Angeles Football Club as the example because it's relevant to me right now, and they're a new club to Los Angeles with another pro soccer team in the same city. So, for their, the monetary incentives for them and kind of building their brand and kind of building just the culture and supporters fan base is where they need to be accepted and understand they're not there to displace families or homes. They're not there to, solely, put up, billboards and things like that. They want it to be an option of hope and joy for the community. And so similar to, the question that you had asked me earlier, the LAFC front office and the supporter cultures staff group went to the community and asked them, what do you want out of the stadium? Where would you like the supporter section to be placed? How would you like the seats to be, arranged? And the supporters came back with feedback and, desires and what they thought would be that perfect scenario. And then on top of that, LAFC continues to give back to the community with, different food drives, blood drives, initiatives in different schools or particular places in Los Angeles that may be underserved or haven't necessarily gotten that attention. So it is, I think, twofold where, by professional sport organizations giving back and making, a very considerate effort for philanthropic initiatives, In turn, the community, the people that would be sitting in the stands and also supporting or telling, their family members or neighbors that, this is the right organization to support. Like, they put their money where their mouth is, they mean it. And so I think it's a win-win when the sports orgs, involve themselves on the philanthropic side.
Absolutely. And Bridget, how do you use the platforms of athletes to increase philanthropic strategies in your organization? And in this case, the retired athletes.
Yeah, so I think we've definitely seen, especially this year, athletes, whether they're active or they're former players, they really understand that they have a platform now. And just as they're being strategic as who their partners are on the corporate side, as to like what brands they're ambassadors for, which commercials they want to get involved in, we're seeing that on the sports philanthropy side as well. And I think that the thing with athletes is when you're in a role such as ours, you really need to understand what are their values, what missions are they connected to personally through either their own experience or a family member's experience, and just seeing how you can help them. Because so many times you're in the clubhouse, you're in the locker room, hey, can you sign this? Can you meet this person? That when you're able to offer, hey, how can I help you? I see you really want to do stuff with the MS Society. What can we do? Can we donate an auction item? Can we do this? And just so that the athlete feels like it's reciprocal with helping others. But I think just the way that an athlete's star power can really shine on an issue or a cause is amazing. A simple retweet or a simple post about an initiative or a program can reach millions of people. And there's just something about that that truly is amazing. And it's when you are able to align with the athletes, active or legends, who are like, yeah, I'm all about that. Or yeah, like I want to post that. I love this program. How can I help? And the way social media has just evolved, and with all the eyeballs on so many athletes' accounts, it's just insane how one simple message or photo or video can really drive impact and change the narrative for a community initiative or program.
Absolutely. And I think now more than ever, like you mentioned, athletes are really realizing the platform they have. And if they already know it before, I think everyone around them is realizing as well.
Oh, and even on the legislative level, we're seeing so many people understand now that politicians will answer the phone for Michael Jordan, but they might not answer the phone for like Mike Smith. Like, you know what I mean? It's just being able to use your brand and that star power to start driving change on the legislative and the policy level. That's huge right now. So I think we're going to see a lot of that happening in the future.
Yeah. And Heather, on your end with the current players that you work with, how are you able to best help them utilize their platform?
Yeah, so I think we could be in a unique position because there are sometimes when guys come on the team, they already have their own foundation. And then there are other guys on the team that could be the rookies, the young guys that don't. So we kind of fluctuate and pivot between each guy. So for example, Kevin Durant, he has his own foundation, and the way we support him is we help with anything they may need on that. So they have their own foundation, so they have a built-in staff for that. So we work hand in hand with that staff. For any other guy on our team that may not have a foundation, we have conversations with them too. Going back and being intentional of what everyone else had said is, what interests you? What do you want to do? Right? Because we always want to put our players in the best light and the best foot forward. You never want to put them in front of a group. If you have a shy guy, could be a rookie, a shy guy who comes on and he's not very chatty, I wouldn't put him in front of kids, right? Because all these kids are going to be looking up to him. And if he clams up, now you've put the guy in a bad position and he's not going to want to work with you again, right? So I think we have a really good system with that. So we try to have conversations when the guys come on the team, and beginning of each season too, of, have your interests changed from last year? Is there something else that came on board? Is there something near and dear to your heart? Things like that.
Nice. And I can attest to that, having worked closely with you back in 2017 with one of our clients. Heather and her team were just really, really excellent in helping us get what we needed for the foundation. So thank you. So Janet, you mentioned when you were at UC Santa Barbara, your first experience working in sport philanthropy while you were there. What can college students or those looking to get into the industry in general do to prepare to succeed in sports philanthropy?
I would say look at volunteering. Right now, I want to encourage those that want to get some virtual experience to look at Volunteer Match. They're looking for it's a database where a lot of nonprofits are seeking help. And right now, because we are limited to go into a building or be outdoors, being able to kind of get some behind the scenes, whether it's administrative, grant writing, all of those skill sets, you would be surprised at how much you could take it into the next role. When I was in college, the organization that I worked with, I led their outreach efforts. And I also helped do a lot of fundraising. And we would do grassroots fundraising. I'm talking about food sales, car washes. We threw a couple of club parties to help pay for some expenses. And so I say that is super grassroots fundraising. And then on the sports side, I mean, we would do galas and we would do auctions, 50-50 raffles, and all of those. And so being able to have an understanding of philanthropy from a nonprofit perspective, and also keeping a pulse in that as well, also keeping a pulse in sort of the corporate social responsibility space, because what we are doing is we're in a role of selling giving and being able to have, whether it's your fan base or your donors, align with what your mission is and together collaborate to be able to make a greater impact. And everyone loves to see the stories. What's even greater is when you start creating those generational fans that were impacted by either the youth clinic that they attended, and then they have someone that was probably a military member, you honor them. And so you continue to have those different touch points that strengthens the relationship. So volunteering, sports internships, I know right now are a little bit unique. I mean, the industry is definitely hurting, but have big faith that it's going to come back stronger. And there's going to be new roles coming out too. I mean, there's infectious disease roles that are probably going to be coming out within the sports industry. Of course, a lot of analytics. Philanthropy, I mean, this year, philanthropy shined and essentially carried the stories and helped different communities from feeding to providing internet connections to being able to get voters out to register. I mean, the power is immense. And so, and connecting and networking, don't be afraid to connect with someone. This space is very, very small. Someone knows someone in another sports team, another league. There's oftentimes that people kind of switch between leagues, and think outside of just sports teams. There's agencies, there is representations, of course, marketing, there's sports tech as well. So there's a lot of opportunity.
Such great advice. Thank you. And before we start our Q&A portion with questions from the audience, we have one last question for all of the panelists, and we'll start off with you, Luke. What advice would you give to someone looking to enter into the sports philanthropy space?
I think first off, you have to be really passionate about that giving and just being selfless, and that I think it was like, it may not be the most glamorous job. It may look like that from the outside, looking in, but it takes a lot of hard work. And then I think advice for sports philanthropy and just general advice, and something that I'm kind of holding on to and relaying to the kids that I work with, is just be willing to be vulnerable in situations, to put yourself out there. Like, yes, you may get turned down, or they may not return the email, but at least you tried. And that vulnerability, and this is like the social work side coming out of me, it's like that vulnerability allows you to be like your bravest you can possibly be. So like right now, like I'm being vulnerable in this space, as is the other panelists, but it is turning into a very brave situation for me to articulate these words. And similar to when I applied for this, and didn't even apply for the job, I cold emailed the former director just to ask for coffee. And I crafted the email, I sat on it for like a month and a half before I sent it out because I was afraid he wouldn't respond, and he responded. So be willing to be vulnerable, and that can turn into some very powerful bravery.
Nice. And Bridget?
Yeah, I think Janet really made a lot of great points. One of the things that I talk to a lot of younger individuals who are interested in sports philanthropy is don't forget to look outside the teams. So many fantastic organizations have athlete and entertainment ambassadors. When you think of like Special Olympics, at UNICEF, at Make-A-Wish, all of these people who are working with the teams to coordinate their programming and to impact the individuals that are part of their organizations. In DC, so much is done for the military, whether it's USO, TAPS, and then across the country, so many teams are working in that space as well. So I think, yes, working for a team is awesome. You don't spend as much time with the players as you think you do. And don't forget about the other ways that you can still be involved in sports philanthropy outside of the teams. And it also boggles my mind that so many young people don't know about Teamwork Online. I thought that was just a given in our industry, but that website, teamworkonline.com, is where you can find so many internships and entry-level positions. And I know we really are in a tough spot right now within our industry, but jobs and internships are still being posted. So give it a look, and maybe, even just perusing job descriptions, you start to realize like, oh, wait, I can do that, or that's a role, or this is an aspect of a role. And just really knowledge is power. So just learn as much as you can about this industry and traditional nonprofits as a whole.
Yes, absolutely. And Janet, what advice would you give?
So I would say that be willing to fail and take the lessons that you learn from those failures and then improve them. And we are also because we are in a space right now where we are all working from home, there are so many resources out there where you can self-teach yourself certain skills. Also, you want to be able to, because there has been a downsize across a lot of organizations, a lot of individuals are having to wear multiple hats, and you're having to learn new skill sets. And that's probably going to be for the next couple of months or so. I also want to recommend that as you look at the different careers that you might be interested in, reach out to professionals in that and ask them questions and ask them about their journey. Also, if there might be an internship that you think you might not like because you might not be interested in it at that time, try it, because you're going to learn something from it. I remember I did an internship with Fox Sports in productions, and I learned that I wanted to have a role in which I was able to interact with the public and in the office as well. And I also learned sort of the back end of what TV production was, and learned that I liked it, but it just wasn't a role fit for my personality and my talents and skill set as well. Definitely keep a pulse of what's happening within the industry. So when I go on my morning runs, I always tune into Sports Business Journal. They have their podcast. It's like an 8-minute snippet. And they also have emails, and look at other industries too, and keep sort of that pulse in there, because you just never know the information that you get from reading. You can apply it to some of the projects that you're working with. And then be cognizant also of the organizations within your market, and what connections that they have within sports teams as well. So that's what I got.
All good there. And Heather, what about you?
I have to say, I think echo what a lot of other people were doing is do your research on companies that it can be a team, but also I would recommend as well what Bridget said, outside of teams, see what the leagues are doing. See what businesses are doing that tie into sports as well, right? I know we mentioned a couple other nonprofits that have a sports arm. So that could be something there. So do your homework on that, see what they're doing. So what Janet said, keep your finger on the pulse of it. And I'd also say be open-minded too. I think Janet just referenced about interning for Fox on the production side of things. When I interned for the Special Olympics of New Jersey, I was put in the law enforcement department. I had no idea what that would entail, but Special Olympics has their right arm is police. So going down that path, I was able to see, I had to work with other departments as an intern. So I got to peel back the layers of what other departments did and say, hey, I really like that. And then I would have coffee with that person and sit down and learn about what their job is too. So I think any of the internships that come across, they are going to intersect with community and philanthropy at some point. So if you're looking to just kind of break in, you could probably take any internship that may interest you and you will have a crossover for it. So you can get a little taste of it too.
Very true. Well, thank you guys all for all your advice there. We're going to move on to the audience questions. Our first question comes from Margaret. How do you balance working with the same groups of people and or organizations to build long relationships versus partnering with new groups that adhere to more current needs of the community? We can start, whoever'd like to start there.
I could take it. I think for us in Brooklyn, the way we do that, you've already had relationships built when the arena was built, but then always gaining new relationships, right? I think it goes across the board and it helps your needs and it helps the needs of the community that you're working in and for. Brooklyn is huge. I know everyone always thinks, oh, New York is big, New York City is so big. Brooklyn is so big, and I've been here 3 years. We've only scratched the surface in my eyes. So I think it's always a great opportunity to continue to use the partners that you have, right? Because you trust them, you know them, and you know they're going to do great things with you, but also just to keep building your Rolodex within the community, because at some point you may have to pivot. If there's another shutdown, another COVID, something like this, a natural disaster or whatever, you're going to go to different groups as well. So to have those already in your Rolodex would be great.
Okay, does anyone else have anything to add?
I just wanted to shine a little realism really quickly too. Sometimes in this space, we have to remember that we report to boards or we report directly to someone in ownership who's the chair of the foundation. And it really depends. Sometimes these partnerships, you and your colleagues, like, oh, there's this great new organization. They're really doing grassroots things in this, troubled area of the city or the region, but it could get shut down. And that has nothing to do with you or their work or your presentation. It might not be what the board wants to do or what an athlete who's involved with you wants to do, what the ownership group wants to do. At the beginning of my career, someone once told me, when you work for a team, you really either do a pet project for ownership, a pet project for your star player, or you're really responding to needs of the community where you guys play. And it's true. And I think it's very different at what teams you're at. But I think to Heather's point, like, you can always, don't burn a bridge, even if it's not the right partnership at that time. Stay up with them, follow them on social media personally, just so you know what they're doing. And then maybe one day the right partnership opportunity will arise.
Wonderful. Luke or Janet, do you guys have anything to add to that question?
My quick thoughts is organizations needs change over time. And so you always want to sort of have that touch base to make sure that you are filling that need. And I know that was mentioned earlier, because there might be a situation where they no longer they have that need met and might need assistance in another aspect of it that maybe your organization is not able to support because it's not aligned strategically to your CSR plan, but maybe you can connect them to another partner that could support them in that. So that's, yeah.
Wonderful.
And I'll just echo what everyone has said. Those were fantastic answers. And I mean, what I was going to say was just staying true to who you are and what you want your department to be focused on. And to Janet's point, if you really understand what the request is or what this potential partner could be, connecting them to where, it would be most beneficial and most impactful would actually be better for that, potential partner.
Nice. Okay. And for our final question here, it comes from Daniel, and this is very relevant for, I know, a lot of people who are listening in. And you guys talked about what skills you have to succeed in sports philanthropy. But when you're looking for a candidate for a community relations or a role in sports philanthropy, what qualities and other aspects are you looking for? And Heather, we can start with you.
I think it goes to what I was saying before about having an open mind too. I like to look at background, and obviously knowing if it's an internship, you may not have an extensive background, but kind of seeing any activities that you've done, if it makes sense. And then also just having that conversation, right? I think I had someone who applied for our internship for the spring actually email me their resume and cover letter. I sit and read those too. I don't manage the interns for our department. I have a senior manager who actually does a great job doing that. But for me to be able to look at all that stuff, I'm always like, and I always respond to when someone emails me about an internship or a question or anything like that. Sometimes it takes me a little time. We all know how our inboxes get and they get bogged down, but I know what it was like when I was an intern. So I try to give that out too and give back of knowing I would wait with holding my breath if someone would respond. So I try to respond to every intern question that we get.
Nice. And Luke?
Sorry. So I'm not in a community relations role, but I think in general, in a hiring, like when I'm in a hiring position, and or like looking for potential volunteers or just people to have champions of the program, so obviously like understanding their passion and their why, and if that aligns more closely to like what it is that we're doing. And I'm always just looking for that, the personality and charisma where they're easy to be around, they can communicate thoughts and opinions, and then just very willing to just get involved and be engaged, not necessarily looking for a monetary gain or a signed t-shirt or something. They just want to be there because they like or feel passionate about what that mission is. So I would say the personality, charisma, and then the passion.
That's so true. And Janet, what would you say for candidates looking for the CR role or other sports philanthropy roles?
So have an understanding of what your why is and why you're going into the space. And have a story attached to it. We all had different stories as to why we were connected to sports philanthropy and the giving aspect of it. We can also tell when we have candidates that are applying that are fans, just by how they answer the different questions. So that's one thing. I also pay careful attention to, did you do your research about the community programs that you're going to be working on, or are you just kind of just pulling stuff out of the air? Because then that lets me that if I give you a project, are you going to deep dive into being able to not only look at the programs, but look at the different partnerships and have sort of a outside view of what you can bring to the table for that particular organization or that particular program. Information is easily accessible, so there's really no excuse to not look up what those initiatives are and be able to familiarize yourself, because at the same time, you're also selling yourself as a candidate to be an ambassador, so that you are then going into the community and you're being a voice with different organizations, different community partners. When you're asking donors for checks, when you're in front of board members, you are an ambassador. And then also ask the questions as well with the organization or the team that you're interviewing with, if they're a right fit for you as well. Because different teams and different sports leagues have different strategies and how they impact the community. There might be one that's heavily focused on education and military and youth sports. And there's another one that might be more hunger awareness and more like STEM focus. And so not everyone does everything. And you have to be able to get an understanding if some of the projects that you're going to be working with are also going to help you grow as well as you look to grow professionally.
Yes, absolutely. And Bridget, to close things out, what advice would you have for those looking for this role?
I'm just going to keep it general because my fellow panelists were able to speak very well about what we look for in sports philanthropy, but cover letters are key. Usually if I don't see a cover letter with a resume, I'm kind of just like, why? And also remembering to save your resumes and cover letters as PDFs. That is really key. No matter what level you are, the PDF files are essential. No Word docs out there, guys. But I think too, for me personally, I love seeing real experience. And so whether that is just, as Janet was saying earlier, you're doing bake sales for your sorority or your team when you were in college, really being able to show that you have some initial footing in this world of fundraising or community programming or event planning, just to see, okay, there's a little bit of a footing there. You've got the beginnings of a great foundation. Now how can you really use this internship to build upon it, to start this career that you have an interest in as well, sports philanthropy. So those are just a couple tidbits to keep it short.
No, such great points. And you can really, the point of the cover letter is really to be able to bring that in, those experiences that you have that may not be a direct fit, to help explain the story. So excellent advice from you all. Thank you. So, wow, the hour just flew by. I want to say thank you to Heather, Bridget, Luke, and Janet for that great conversation. Michelle, Mackenzie, Sarah, and I appreciate you all sharing your experiences as you have been navigating through this time of uncertainty and constant change. We have loved listening to your career paths and how you each have been able to pursue your passions of sports and philanthropy. Thank you for joining our panel, and thank you to all of the viewers. Please be sure to follow us on social media at Champions for Philanthropy to keep up with our work and to find out about future events. And for our panelists, if you'd like to share your contact information, please feel free to do so in the chat. And we will make sure that we can, in our recap email, send it out as well. So again, thank you all for joining and have a wonderful evening.